You know, there's something remarkable, almost invisible, about a man who moves through life with direction, not the kind of direction that's plastered on a vision board or shouted loudly to impress a crowd. I'm talking about the quiet, firm, unwavering pull of purpose that shows in the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, and most importantly, the way he acts. Women aren't sitting around with a checklist of superficial traits. They feel this. They recognize it sometimes before even understanding why, because there's something deeply attractive, deeply trustworthy about a man who knows where he's going. A man like that doesn't need to dominate the room. He doesn't need to tell everyone he's a leader. His purpose does the speaking for him. He isn't flailing around for attention or spinning in circles trying to figure out who he is. He's rooted, he's stable. And that stability, that internal anchor, becomes magnetic. A woman looks at him and knows this is someone I could follow, not because he demands it, but because his life demands it of him first. And this isn't about being rich or famous or having all the answers. It's about clarity, it's about intention. He wakes up with something to aim at. He's shaped by discipline, molded by responsibility. That doesn't mean he never fails or stumbles, of course he does. But when he does, he doesn't spiral into self-pity. He regroups, recalibrates, and moves again, forward, always forward. That's the kind of man who draws admiration, not because of perfection, but because of trajectory. Women sense this deeply. They are profoundly intuitive creatures. They can detect when a man is drifting, uncertain, masking confusion with bravado or distraction. And they can feel when a man is striving towards something higher than himself. That striving, however imperfect, is what tells her he's real. He's not waiting to be saved. He's not expecting someone to fix him. He's building something, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet. She doesn't need to see the finished product. She just needs to believe in the blueprint, and she does when his actions reveal that it's there. And there's another piece here, a subtle one. When a man has purpose, he doesn't chase people. He draws them in. He's not desperate. He's not clinging. He's not demanding love as some kind of right. He's focused on something meaningful, and in doing so, he becomes meaningful. That's what she chooses, not the man screaming, "Look at me," but the man who barely looks up because he's busy becoming. Purpose gives a man shape. Without it, he becomes foggy, vague, hard to grasp. Women don't want fog. They want form. Form they can trust, respect, and perhaps build a life beside. So if you want to be the man she chooses, don't obsess over charm or lines or image. Anchor yourself in something bigger than your own comfort. Make decisions that reflect vision, not just convenience. Get clear on who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, not just for her, but because your life depends on it. That's the man she chooses, the one already chosen by a greater purpose. Safety, real safety, isn't something you shout about. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's something a woman feels in the presence of a certain kind of man, and it goes far beyond whether he's physically strong or whether he can fight. That's the surface. That's the obvious part. The kind of safety we're talking about, the kind that compels a woman to choose you, is deeper. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's spiritual. It's something in the way you look at her, the way you listen, the way you carry tension without letting it spill all over the room. She feels safe not because you protect her from the world, but because you've already begun protecting her from yourself, from your chaos, your impulsivity, your instability. Now, that's a heavy idea, because it means you've taken responsibility for the parts of yourself that are dangerous. Every man has them, and every man who refuses to confront them becomes a liability to the people he claims to love. But when you discipline those parts, when you bring order to your own inner world, you become someone she can lean into, not out of dependency, but out of trust. She doesn't have to flinch when you raise your voice. She doesn't have to walk on eggshells around your moods. She doesn't have to guess whether you'll be there when it counts. She just knows, and that knowing is rare. That knowing is safety. You see, a lot of men are trying to be impressive. That's not what women are ultimately looking for. They're looking for someone who gives them room to relax, someone whose presence allows them to put down their armor for a while, because women live in a world that demands so much of them. And when they find a man whose calm cuts through that chaos, they don't want to let him go. He becomes a kind of shelter, not because he's perfect, but because he's stable. That stability doesn't come from pretending to be strong. It comes from confronting your weaknesses. It comes from telling the truth even when it's hard. It comes from holding your own frame when things get messy, and they will get messy. Relationships always do. Life always does, but the man she chooses is the one who doesn't fall apart when that happens. He doesn't run. He doesn't lash out. He stays grounded even when it hurts. You offer her safety by being reliable, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. When you say you'll call, you call. When you say you'll show up, you show up. You don't flirt with chaos and then ask her to deal with the fallout. You take care of your mind. You take care of your habits. You take care of your word, and in doing so, you create a space where she can actually breathe. Because what she's really choosing isn't a man who talks about being a protector. She's choosing the man who isn't a threat not to her heart, not to her spirit, not to the peace she's been trying to build in her own life. That kind of man stands out. He doesn't need to chase anyone. He becomes a place she returns to, a place that doesn't just look strong, but feels safe, and that's the man she chooses, the one whose presence speaks, "You're safe here." There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to be performed. It doesn't come dressed in arrogance or inflated ego. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It walks into a room quietly and still changes the atmosphere. That's the kind of confidence women respond to, not the brittle kind, not the kind that's masking insecurity with volume and bravado, but the kind that's been earned through discipline, hardship, failure, and recovery. The kind that comes from knowing who you are, where you stand, and what you will and will not tolerate, not out of pride, but out of clarity. When a man is truly confident, he's not easily shaken. He doesn't panic when he's criticized. He doesn't need to dominate conversations. He listens. He waits. He chooses his words carefully, not because he's unsure, but because he respects the weight of speech. That kind of confidence is rare, and because it's rare, it's powerful. And women are drawn to it instinctively, not because they want to be controlled, but because they want to feel like they're in the presence of someone who's already controlling himself. This kind of man doesn't rely on approval to feel alive. He doesn't need to be told he's enough. He already knows, and that knowing doesn't come from being told he's special his whole life. It comes from facing himself, his flaws, his failures, his darkness, and standing up again anyway. Confidence is forged in the fire of reality. It doesn't come from fantasy, and when a man has been through something and come out stronger rather than bitter, calmer rather than resentful, women notice. Because they're not just looking at the man he is now, they're imagining the man he'll be when things get hard, and they want to know, will he crumble or will he hold? Arrogance, on the other hand, is loud. It's insecure. It demands attention and demands control because it's deeply afraid of being exposed. It pushes people away under the illusion of power, but confidence invites people in, without needing to impress, without trying to manipulate. It's grounded, it's self-respecting, and because of that, it respects others too. You know, a confident man doesn't flinch when a woman tests his boundaries, and she will, not maliciously, but because she needs to know he's anchored. That he doesn't fall apart when challenged, that he can say no, not out of anger, but out of integrity. A man like that can lead, not because he insists on it, but because it becomes obvious he should. His presence isn't overbearing. It's stabilizing. That steadiness makes room for her to soften, to trust, to relax, not because he demands submission or reverence, but because his confidence doesn't compete with her strength. It honors it. And here's something most people miss. True confidence includes humility. The man who knows he doesn't know everything, but is willing to learn, to listen, to grow asterisk. That asterisk is a man who's safe to follow. He's not trying to be right all the time, he's trying to be better, and that's what makes all the difference. So when she chooses the man who doesn't need the spotlight but shines anyway. The man who can stand alone without crumbling, the man who doesn't posture or pretend. Because in a world full of noise and masks, the man who stands firm in quiet confidence. He's the one who gets chosen. You want to know what separates the man she's drawn to from the man she forgets. It's not charm. It's not the most clever pickup line or a well-rehearsed sense of humor. It's something far more difficult, far more rare. It's the ability to actually listen. And I don't mean listening the way most people do, waiting for their turn to speak, collecting ammunition to win a conversation or half, nodding while their mind is somewhere else. I mean real listening, listening to understand, listening with presence, listening with humility, because when a woman speaks, especially when she's revealing something vulnerable, she isn't always just giving you information. She's offering you a glimpse into how she sees the world, how she feels about herself, about you, about life, and most men miss it. They miss it because they think the goal is to solve the problem, or to defend themselves, or to quickly smooth things over so they can move on. But when you do that, you send a clear message: I'm not really here, I'm managing you, I'm trying to end this, not engage with it, and she feels that immediately. Now, a man who truly listens doesn't try to control the conversation. He doesn't rush to give advice or shift the topic back to himself. He leans in, he reflects, he pauses, not because he's weak or passive, but because he understands that in that moment, what matters most is that she feels heard. That doesn't mean you agree with everything she says. It doesn't mean you abandon your point of view. It means you're strong enough to let her voice exist beside your own without needing to dominate it. And women recognize that strength. They may not articulate it that way, but they know it when they feel it. A man who can sit in uncomfortable emotions, who can handle disagreement without needing to win, who can stay engaged when things get messy, that man becomes a refuge. Not because he's perfect, but because he's present. He doesn't shrink from emotional weight. He carries it, shares it, even when he doesn't fully understand it yet. And this, ironically, makes you more trustworthy. Because when you listen to understand, you're not just building intimacy. You're showing her who you are. You're saying, asterisk, I'm here, even when it's not easy, even when I don't have the answer, even when I feel challenged. Asterisk, that kind of presence builds a foundation that charm alone could never hold up. And there's something else. When you really listen, you learn, not just about her, but about how to be a better man. You learn where you've hurt without knowing it. You learn how your habits affect someone else. You learn what matters most to someone you care about, and that kind of learning doesn't weaken you, it refines you. It shapes you into someone who's not just tolerable to be with, but a blessing, someone who uplifts instead of burdens, someone who adds peace, not confusion. So if you're wondering what it is that makes a woman lean in, what makes her choose asterisk, you asterisk, understand this. It's not just your presence that matters. It's your asterisk attention. Asterisk, she chooses the man who's strong enough to be silent when needed, to ask questions instead of rushing to conclusions, and to stay when things become emotionally real. Because in a world where everyone's talking, she'll always choose the man who listens. One of the most misunderstood qualities in men today is this, the ability to have standards, and to actually live by them. You don't hear much about that anymore. You hear a lot about being flexible, about compromising, about going with the flow. And sure, there's value in adaptability, but not at the cost of your identity, not at the cost of your core. Because a man who abandons his values to gain approval isn't gaining anything of real substance. He's slowly disappearing. Women don't choose the man who bends to everything. They don't choose the man who tolerates anything to avoid conflict or preserve comfort. They choose the man who's anchored in something, something he's thought through. Something he believes in, because when a man has standards, clear, firm, consistent, what he's really saying is this, asterisk, I know who I am. Asterisk, and that kind of self-knowledge is rare. It's attractive. It's reliable. It tells her, asterisk, this is a man I can trust, even when we disagree, even when I test him, even when life pushes against him. Asterisk, you see, when a man lacks standards, he becomes chaotic, and chaos isn't appealing. It's unstable. It's unpredictable. If you say yes to everything, if you have no line you won't cross, no belief you're willing to hold firm under pressure, how is she supposed to trust that you'll stand for her when it matters? If you won't even stand for yourself, and it starts with the small things, the way you speak, the way you treat people, the way you handle temptation, the way you navigate boundaries, yours and hers. A man with standards doesn't entertain what's beneath him, not because he's better than others, but because he's already made a decision about the kind of man he wants to be, and he acts accordingly. Even when no one's watching, especially then, there's this lie out there that tells men, say yes to whatever she wants. Don't make waves. Be agreeable. That's how you'll get chosen. But that's not how it works. Because a woman doesn't want a man who disappears into her. She wants a man who meets her. A man she can trust to say no when it matters. A man who challenges her if needed. Not to win, not to dominate, but because he values truth more than comfort. That's a man who commands respect, and respect is the foundation of real connection. And let me be clear, having standards isn't about being rigid or cold. It's not about control, it's about being rooted. A man who knows what he will and will not tolerate creates space for something real to grow. He's not swayed by popularity. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't crumble under pressure from people who want him to soften his edges for their benefit. He chooses strength, and that strength creates trust. Women notice this immediately. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it, in the way he says no without apology, in the way he walks away from chaos without drama, in the way he stays committed to his principles even when it costs him something. Because that kind of man, he's rare, he's not easily influenced, and because of that, he's deeply respected. So if you're wondering why she chose him, and not the man who tried so hard to please understand this, she chose the man with standards, because a man with standards is a man who can lead. There's something you notice in men who have figured themselves out, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to know they're moving forward, and one of the most defining features of those men is that they're building. They're not just existing, reacting, or coasting. They're building something. It might be a career, a craft, a mission, a vision for the future. It might be a business, a family, a community, or even just a better version of themselves. But it's real, it's tangible, it's forward-facing, and it changes the way people experience them, especially women. A man who's building isn't stuck. He's not obsessing over the past. He's not blaming everyone else for what went wrong. He's aiming, he's working, he's in motion. That forward movement is powerful, and not because it makes him more impressive, but because it makes him trustworthy. She can see that he's going somewhere. She doesn't have to guess whether he has a future. She can see him creating one. And that creation, that ongoing process, signals something incredibly important, stability and direction. A lot of men are waiting. Waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for motivation, waiting for a relationship to finally give them purpose. But women don't choose the man who's waiting. They choose the man who's already in the process of building, because he doesn't need to be rescued. He doesn't sit around hoping someone else will give his life meaning. He's already doing the hard work of shaping it himself. That kind of man becomes deeply attractive, not because he's finished, but because he's engaged in the process. And it's not just about ambition either. It's about responsibility. It's about taking ownership over your time, your energy, your vision, because when you build, you're investing. You're sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term strength. And a woman sees that. She sees that you're not easily distracted, that you're not pulled in every direction by impulse or emotion. She sees discipline, she sees drive, she sees focus, and those things don't just attract her. They help her feel safe. Because if a man can build something, it means he can protect something. He can maintain something. He's not here for the high of the moment. He's here to create a life, to hold a vision, and to live in a way that brings structure, not chaos. That matters more than any temporary excitement. It signals that he has the capacity to lead, to support, and to grow alongside someone rather than depend on her to carry all the weight. And here's something even deeper. When a man is building, he's not just providing for a future. He's shaping his character, because every step in the process demands something from him: resilience, patience, humility, courage. He becomes better not by thinking about becoming better, but by doing the work, failing, getting back up, and continuing anyway. And when a woman sees that you're willing to carry the burden of your own life without collapsing under it, she starts to believe that maybe asterisk, just maybe asterisk, you can help carry hers too. This is why she chooses him. Because he's not asking for direction. He's already walking the path. He's not lost in fantasies or distractions. He's committed, and that commitment to building, whatever it is, makes him a man worth building asterisk with. Asterisk, she chooses the man who builds because she knows he won't crumble.